The universe had known peace for exactly 3 hours. That was how long it took for the Kethmori warfleet to travel from the smoking ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld to their next target. High Commander. Vexthul stood 12 feet tall on the bridge of the flagship Blood of Eternity. His obsidian scales caught the red light from the tactical displays, making him look like a creature carved from living shadow and fire. Each scale was harder than human steel, and beneath them lay muscles that could crush titanium. His forearms ended in claws that had personally torn apart the leaders of 17 different species. "Status report," Vexthul commanded. His voice rumbled like an earthquake through the bridge speakers. Sub-Commander Nalthis approached, her own impressive form dwarfed by her superior. At 10 feet tall, she was considered small for a Kethmori female, but her red eyes glowed with the same cold intelligence that had made their species the masters of known space. "The Zephyrian resistance has been completely eliminated, High Commander. Their cities burn, their fleets are destroyed, and their survivors have been processed for the slave worlds. Total casualties on our side 0. Vexthul nodded. This was expected. The Zephyrians had been a proud warrior race, known throughout the galaxy for their skill in battle and their advanced weapons technology. They had ruled over 12 star systems and commanded respect from even the mighty Galactic Council. Their plasma cannons could melt through a mountain, and their warriors trained from birth to fight and die with honor. It had taken the Kethmori exactly 6 hours to wipe them from existence. And their technology? Vexthul asked. Already analyzed and catalogued. Their plasma weapons are primitive compared to our reality shapers. Their ships are slow and clumsy next to our phase walkers. Their armor might as well be made of paper. Nalthis paused. We found nothing worth adding to our arsenal. This was also expected. For 3,000 years, the Kethmori had conquered world after world, species after species. In all that time, they had never encountered a race that could offer them anything they did not already possess in superior form. They were, as their ancient texts proclaimed, the perfect endpoint of evolution. The Kethmori had evolved on a death world called Kethmor, where the gravity was 4 times Earth normal and every creature was a predator. Only the strongest, fastest, and smartest had survived to reproduce. Over millions of years, this had created a race of beings that were living weapons. Their bones were denser than most metals. Their muscles could generate tremendous force without tiring. Their brains processed information at superhuman speeds and never forgot anything they learned. Their lifespan stretched over thousands of years, giving them time to master every skill and accumulate vast knowledge. But their greatest advantage was their technology. The Kethmori had learned to manipulate reality itself. Their weapons did not simply destroy matter. They convinced the universe that the target had never existed in the first place. Their ships did not travel through space. They stepped sideways through dimensions where distance had no meaning. Their armor did not block attacks. It made the wearer exist in a state where harm was impossible. How many worlds does that make? Vexthul asked. 847 conquered systems, High Commander. 63 different species completely subjugated. The Galactic Council estimates that 94% of known space now serves the Kethmori Empire. Vexthul allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. When his ancestors had first left their homeworld, the galaxy had been full of proud civilizations that thought themselves mighty. The Altarians with their living ships that could regenerate from any damage. The Crystalline Collective with their ability to share thoughts across light years. The Machine Lords who had replaced their biological forms with perfect robotic bodies. All of them had fallen. All of them now served in the slave pits or had been eliminated entirely when they proved too proud to submit. What of the remaining 6%? Vexthul asked. Nalthis activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions. Most of it was colored in the deep red that indicated Kethmori control. A few scattered dots of blue showed independent worlds, mostly empty, systems or primitive planets that were not worth the effort of conquest. Mostly uninhabited systems or pre-spaceflight civilizations, she reported. Our scouts continue to survey the outer rim territories, but they rarely find anything of interest. And the Galactic Council? They continue to meet on the neutral station at Babylon Nexus. They pass resolutions and make speeches about peace and cooperation. Nalthis's tone made clear what she thought of such foolishness. They know better than to interfere with our expansion. The last time they tried to form a coalition against us, we destroyed their combined fleets in a single afternoon. Vexthul remembered that day fondly. 47 different species had joined forces, bringing together the greatest military minds in the galaxy and the most advanced weapons ever created. They had been confident that their unity and diversity would overcome Kethmori's superiority. The battle had lasted exactly 23 minutes. At the end, no Allied ship remained intact, and the Kethmori fleet had not suffered so much as a scratch on their hulls. "High Commander," came a voice from the communication station. "We are receiving a priority message from Scout Fleet 7. Display it." The main screen flickered and the image of Scout Commander Zektar appeared. Like all Kethmori, he was an imposing figure, but something in his expression caught Vexthul's attention. Zektar looked puzzled. "High Commander, I am transmitting from the outer rim of Sector 2847. My scouts have discovered a new star system with 9 planets, one of which supports primitive life." Vexthul frowned. Why was Zektar bothering him with such routine discoveries? Scout fleets found new primitive worlds every few months. Most were not even worth cataloging. "The species calls itself human," Zektar continued. "They have achieved basic space travel, but have not yet left their home system. They possess nuclear weapons and simple computers, but no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, and no advanced materials science." "Then why are you wasting my time with this report?" Vexthul growled. "Because of their behavior, High Commander. I have been observing them for 3 days and they are unusual." "Explain." Zektar paused as if trying to find the right words. "They fight constantly among themselves. Their planet is divided into nearly 200 separate political entities, many of which are at war with each other. They have weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization, yet they continue to build more. They consume resources at an unsustainable rate and pollute their own environment." None of this seemed unusual to Vexthul. Many primitive species went through such phases before they either achieved wisdom or destroyed themselves. "They should have eliminated themselves centuries ago," Zektar continued. "By all logic, such a chaotic and self-destructive species should not be able to survive. Yet not only do they survive, they thrive. Their population grows constantly. Their technology advances at an incredible pace. And most strangely of all, yes, they seem to learn from their mistakes. Each war teaches them better ways to fight. Each disaster shows them how to prepare for the next one. Each conflict makes them stronger instead of weaker." Vexthul considered this. It was indeed unusual. Most species either achieved stability and stagnated, or destroyed themselves through internal conflict. Very few managed to grow stronger through chaos. "Are they a threat?" he asked. Zektar actually laughed at this question. "High Commander, the average human weighs less than 200 pounds and stands barely 6 feet tall. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities. A single Kethmori warrior could kill 100 of them without breaking a sweat. Their most advanced weapons would barely scratch our personal shields. Then why are we discussing them?" "Because," Zektar hesitated, "because they interest me, High Commander. In 3,000 years of conquest, we have encountered every type of species imaginable. Peaceful philosophers who submit immediately, proud warriors who fight to the death, clever scientists who try to negotiate, ancient beings who think they are too wise to be conquered." Vexthul knew all these types well. He had conquered them all. "But humans are different," Zektar said. "They are not wise or strong or advanced. They are chaotic and unpredictable and primitive. Yet something about them suggests that they might be worth studying before we add them to the slave worlds." "You are going soft, Zektar," Vexthul said, but without real anger. Zektar was one of his best scouts with an instinct for identifying valuable species and technologies. "Very well. Take a single ship and make contact. Demonstrate our power and accept their surrender. But do not waste more than a few days on this. We have real conquest to plan." "Understood, High Commander. I will take the Eternal Dominion and begin first contact protocols immediately." The transmission ended and Vexthul turned back to more important matters. The war fleet was approaching the Proximan system, where intelligence reports suggested the locals had developed interesting biotechnology. That might actually be worth his attention. Still, something about Zektar's description nagged at him. A species that grew stronger through conflict? That seemed almost impossible. Conflict consumed resources and killed the strong along with the weak. It should weaken any species that engaged in too much of it. But then the universe was full of minor curiosities. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Kethmori had encountered many strange things. crystals that sang in mathematical harmony, gas clouds that thought collective thoughts, energy beings that existed as pure information. None of it had mattered in the end. No matter how strange or wonderful or seemingly powerful, everything fell before Kethmori's superiority. These humans would be no different. Vexthul dismissed the matter from his mind and focused on the tactical display showing Proximan defenses. Now this was a proper conquest, a unified species with advanced technology and the wisdom to know they were outmatched. They would probably surrender immediately once they saw a Kethmori battle fleet. It would be over in hours, like always. Behind him, the communications officer quietly filed Zektar's report in the scout archives. It joined thousands of similar reports about primitive species that had been contacted, catalogued, and forgotten. The humans would soon be added to the great list of conquered worlds, their planet stripped of resources, their people sent to work in the slave systems. It was as inevitable as the movement of stars across the sky. The Kethmori were the apex predators of the galaxy, and apex predators always won in the end. The universe had known peace for exactly 3 hours. Soon, it would know the familiar comfort of Kethmori order once again. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, with the casual arrogance that had served the Kethmori well for 3 millennia. The ship was 2 miles long and bristled with reality-warping weapons that could unmake matter at the quantum level. Its black hull seemed to absorb light itself, making it look like a slice of empty space shaped like a weapon. Scout Commander Zektar stood on the bridge, studying the primitive system spread out before him. 9 planets orbited a yellow star that the humans called Sol. Most were empty rocks or gas giants, but the 3rd planet showed all the signs of a thriving civilization. City lights covered entire continents and primitive satellites cluttered the space around the world. Pathetic, muttered Sub-Commander Ralvin, Zektar's second-in-command. She was young for a Kethmori, barely 800 years old, but her red eyes held the same cold intelligence that marked their species. They have not even managed to establish permanent settlements on their own moon. Zektar nodded but continued studying the sensor readings. Something about this system felt different from the hundreds of others he had scouted over the centuries. He could not put his finger on what it was. Begin standard first contact procedures, he ordered. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know they are now subjects of the Kethmori Empire. The communications officer, a massive warrior named Thexnull, activated the transmitter. His voice, artificially amplified and translated into the dominant human languages, boomed across every radio frequency on Earth. Attention, primitive beings of the 3rd planet. I am Sub-Commander Thexnull of the Kethmori Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You will cease all military activities and prepare for the arrival of occupation forces. Any resistance will result in the complete elimination of your species. You have 1 solar rotation to acknowledge our authority. This was the standard message delivered to hundreds of worlds over the millennia. Usually, it produced one of 3 responses: immediate surrender, panicked military preparation, or dead silence as the species tried to pretend the message had not been received. The human response was none of these. Instead, within minutes, the communication channels filled with voices, hundreds of voices, then thousands, then millions. They came from every part of the planet, speaking in dozens of different languages, but the translation systems quickly sorted them into comprehensible patterns, and they were asking questions. What is the technological basis for your faster-than-light travel? How do you translate languages you have never encountered before? What is the political structure of the Kethmori Empire? How many species have you encountered in your expansion? What are your energy requirements for that size of ship? Do you reproduce sexually or asexually? What is your average lifespan? How do you maintain social cohesion across such vast distances? Zektar stared at the communications display in bewilderment. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to first contact by conducting an interview. Sir, Thexnull said, his voice uncertain. They are not acknowledging our demand for surrender. They are asking for information about our culture and technology. I can hear that, Zektar growled. Are they stalling for time while they prepare their defenses? Ralvin was studying her tactical displays. Negative, Commander. If anything, their military readiness has decreased since our arrival. Several of their nations have stood down their alert levels and redirected personnel to communication centers. This made no sense at all. Every species the Kethmori had encountered understood that first contact with a superior civilization was either a moment of surrender or the beginning of a fight to the death. But humans seemed to think it was an opportunity for cultural exchange. "Sir," the communications officer said, "one of their leaders is requesting a direct conversation with you." "Which leader?" "All of them. Every major political entity on their planet has submitted a formal request for dialogue. They want to know about our history, our technology, our biology, our philosophy, and our intentions regarding other species in the galaxy." Zektar felt a headache building behind his eyes. This was supposed to be a simple conquest. Arrive, demonstrate power, accept surrender, establish occupation government. He had done it hundreds of times before. "Very well," he said finally. "Open a channel to their United Nations organization. Let us get this over with." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human conference room filled with dozens of representatives from different nations. They looked exactly as the scout reports had described: small, soft, weak creatures with no natural weapons or defenses. The tallest of them barely reached 6 feet, and most looked like they would break if a Kethmori warrior breathed on them too hard. Yet they did not look afraid. "Greetings," said a human woman who appeared to be some kind of spokesperson. "I am Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations. On behalf of the people of Earth, we welcome you to our solar system." Welcome them? Zektar's jaw dropped slightly. Species did not welcome their conquerors. "We understand that you represent a vast interstellar civilization," Santos continued, "and we are eager to learn about your culture and technology. We hope this can be the beginning of a productive relationship between our species." "You misunderstand the situation," Zektar said, finding his voice. "We are not here to establish relationships. We are here to accept your surrender and incorporate your world into the Kethmori Empire. Your species will serve as laborers in our industrial systems." Santos nodded politely. "Yes, we heard your initial message. But before we discuss political arrangements, we would very much like to understand more about your civilization. For instance, how do you maintain economic stability across such vast distances? What is your educational system like? How do you handle technological innovation?" Zektar stared at her. "Did you not understand what I just said? Your world is being conquered. Your species is being enslaved. This is not a cultural exchange." "Oh, we understand perfectly," said another human, a man with gray hair who was identified as the Secretary of Defense. "But you see, we have never encountered an interstellar civilization before. This is an unprecedented learning opportunity. Surely you can spare a few hours to help us understand how such a civilization functions." "Besides," added a third human, apparently some kind of scientist, "your ship represents technologies we have never seen. That hull material, for instance. It seems to absorb electromagnetic radiation across all spectrums. How is that possible? And your propulsion system must operate on principles we have not discovered yet." Zektar looked around his bridge. His officers were as confused as he was. Ralvin shrugged helplessly. Thexnol was checking his translation systems to make sure they were working correctly. "Perhaps," Santos suggested, "we could arrange for a small delegation of our scientists and diplomats to visit your ship. We would be very interested in seeing how your technology works." "Absolutely not," Zektar snapped. "This is a military conquest, not a research expedition." "Then perhaps you could send a delegation to Earth?" the gray-haired man suggested. "We could arrange tours of our major cities, universities, and research facilities. I think you would find human civilization quite fascinating." "I find human civilization irrelevant," Zektar said. "You will surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate the consequences of resistance." Santos tilted her head slightly. "Could you explain what form this demonstration would take?" "We will destroy your moon," Zektar said. This usually got results. Every species understood the implications of weapons that could destroy celestial bodies. "Interesting," said the scientist. "How much energy would that require? And what would be the method? Kinetic bombardment, antimatter weapons, or something more exotic?" Zektar felt his headache getting worse. "It does not matter how we do it. What matters is that you understand we have the power to do it." "Oh, we believe you," Santos said quickly. "Your ship is clearly far beyond our current technological capabilities. But the specific method would help us understand the principles involved. Are you manipulating gravitational fields? Converting matter to energy? Accessing higher dimensional space? We reshape reality itself, Zektar said through gritted teeth. Our weapons convince the universe that the target never existed in the first place. The humans exchanged excited glances. Several of them started taking notes. Quantum manipulation at the macro scale? The scientist asked. That would require computational power beyond anything we can imagine. How do you process the necessary calculations? And how do you prevent quantum decoherence over such large target areas? Zektar realized he was grinding his teeth. That is enough questions. Prepare for demonstration. He nodded to his weapons officer who activated the reality shapers. On the main screen, Earth's moon suddenly developed a series of flickering distortions across its surface. Then, in a flash of impossible light, the entire satellite ceased to exist. Where the moon had hung in space, there was nothing but empty darkness. Zektar waited for the screams of terror, the pleas for mercy, the immediate offers of surrender. This demonstration had never failed to break the spirit of any species. Instead, he heard excited chatter. Did you see those quantum fluctuations just before the detonation? The energy displacement was incredible. Where did all that matter go? We are getting readings from observatories around the world. The tidal effects are already starting to show up in our oceans. This is amazing data. Can we get him to do it again with something smaller, so we can study the process more carefully? Santos looked back at the screen with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than fear. That was remarkable. Would it be possible to get detailed sensor readings of the process? Our physicists would love to understand how you manipulate quantum states on such a large scale. Zektar felt something he had never experienced in 8 centuries of conquest. Complete bewilderment. Every species in the galaxy feared the reality shapers. They were the ultimate expression of Kethmori technological superiority. They had ended wars just by being demonstrated. But humans were treating them like interesting physics experiments. Do you not understand what this means? Zektar asked desperately. We have just destroyed a celestial body. We can do the same to your entire planet. Of course we understand, Santos said patiently. You have weapons capable of large-scale matter manipulation. That makes you extremely dangerous enemies and potentially valuable allies, which is why we would like to understand more about your civilization before we make any decisions about our relationship. There is no relationship, Zektar shouted. There is only conquest. Well, said the gray-haired man, that seems like a rather limited perspective. Surely a civilization as advanced as yours has developed more sophisticated diplomatic options. Zektar looked around his bridge again. His officers were staring at their displays in confusion. Ralvin was running diagnostics on their threat assessment systems, apparently convinced they must be malfunctioning. Sir, Thexnall said quietly, I am monitoring their global communications. They are not preparing for war or panic. Instead, they seem to be organizing some kind of massive research project. Universities around their planet are forming study groups to analyze our technology. Their internet is filling up with theories about how our ships work. Their what? Their global information network. They call it the internet. It allows any human to share information with any other human instantly. Zektar stared at him. They have a planet-wide communication system? More than that, sir. They seem to use it for collaborative problem-solving. When we first made contact, humans all over their planet immediately began sharing information about our ship, our message, and their theories about our technology. They are working together to understand us. This was disturbing news. Most species the Kethmori conquered had fragmented communication systems that could be easily disrupted. A species that could share information instantly across their entire planet would be much more difficult to control. Sir, Ralvin said, looking up from her displays, I recommend we call for backup before proceeding with occupation. Backup? Zektar stared at her. Against these primitives? Sir, their response is completely outside our experience. I think we need guidance from High Command before we proceed. Zektar wanted to argue, but he had to admit that Ralvin was right. In 800 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. Species either surrendered or fought. They did not conduct research projects. Very well, he said finally. Send a message to the fleet. Tell High Commander Vexthal that we have encountered an unusual species that requires further study before conquest can proceed. He looked back at the screen, where Secretary General Santos was still waiting patiently. We will consider your requests, he said, but make no mistake. The Kethmori Empire will not be denied. Of course not, Santos said politely. We look forward to learning more about your empire. In the meantime, would you like us to compile some information about human civilization to share with you? We have quite a bit of scientific and cultural data that might interest your researchers. Zektar ended the transmission and slumped into his command chair. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Kethmori had never encountered a species that responded to invasion by offering to help their conquerors with research projects. He had a feeling this was going to be a very long assignment. 6 months after first contact, Scout Commander Zektar stood over the bodies of 12 Kethmori warriors and tried to understand how this was possible. The patrol had been routine, a simple reconnaissance mission to one of Earth's major cities. The warriors were veterans of dozens of campaigns, each one capable of fighting through an entire army of primitive soldiers. Their personal shields could stop any weapon humans possessed. Their armor could withstand nuclear explosions, and their enhanced reflexes made them nearly impossible to hit in combat. Yet they were all dead. What did this? Sub-Commander Ralvin asked, kneeling beside one of the bodies. The warrior's armor showed no damage, but the soldier inside had died from what appeared to be massive system failure. I do not know, Zektar admitted. This was becoming a disturbingly common phrase in his reports. In 6 months of occupation, the humans had presented him with dozens of situations he could not explain. The occupation itself had been strange from the beginning. When Kethmori ground forces had finally landed on Earth, expecting the usual resistance from desperate defenders, they had instead been met by delegations of scientists, engineers, and military observers. The humans had not fought the landing, they had studied it. Every Kethmori soldier found themselves surrounded by humans with cameras, measuring devices, and endless questions. How did their armor work? What was the energy source for their weapons? How did their ships achieve faster-than-light travel? The questions never stopped. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be learning from the answers. Sir, called warrior Thekmar from across the street. He was examining scorch marks on the wall of a nearby building. These burn patterns are consistent with our plasma weaponry, but the energy discharge is all wrong. Zektar walked over to examine the marks himself. Thekmar was right. The burns looked like they had been made by Kethmori weapons, but the energy signature was different, cleaner, more focused. They are copying our technology, Ralvin said. Joining them, that should be impossible, Zektar replied. Our weapons are based on principles these primitives could not possibly understand. But even as he said it, he knew it was not entirely true. Over the past 6 months, human technology had been advancing at an impossible rate. Their scientists had somehow reverse-engineered Kethmori energy shields from broken equipment left behind by patrols. Their engineers had modified their primitive computers to process quantum calculations that should have required artificial intelligences far beyond their capabilities. Most unsettling, they had begun sharing all of this knowledge freely among themselves. Sir, Thekmar said, pointing to a small device embedded in the wall near the scorch marks. What is that? Zektar pulled the device from the wall and examined it. It was clearly human-made, but it incorporated design elements that were unmistakably Kethmori in origin. The quantum resonance chamber was crude but functional, and the energy-focusing array showed a level of understanding that should have taken decades to develop. They are not just copying, he realized. They are improving our designs. Ralvin's red eyes widened. That is impossible. Our technology has been perfected over thousands of years. Look at the evidence, Zektar said, holding up the device. This energy-focusing array is more efficient than our standard design. They have found a way to achieve the same results with less power consumption. This was the pattern that had been emerging over the past 6 months. Humans would observe Kethmori technology, analyze it, reverse-engineer it, and then somehow make it better. Their scientists worked in vast collaborative networks, sharing information instantly across their planet and building on each other's discoveries, at a rate that seemed to violate the laws of technological development. Kethmori warrior might spend centuries mastering a single weapon system. Humans would encounter the same system, understand its principles in days and improve the design within weeks. Sir, came a voice from Zektar's communicator. This is Patrol Leader Gexivan. My squad has encountered hostile contact in Sector 7. We are taking casualties and request immediate backup. Zektar activated his comm. Casualties? From human resistance fighters? Negative, sir. The attackers are using modified Kethmori equipment. They have personal shields, energy weapons, and some kind of stealth technology we have never seen before. Stealth technology? Humans had barely achieved radar invisibility before the Kethmori arrived. They should not have been able to develop anything that could fool advanced Kethmori sensors. Fall back to safe positions, Zektar ordered. We are en route. He turned to Ralvin and Thekmar. Signal the ship. Tell them to prepare medical teams for incoming wounded. As they made their way through the city streets, Zektar noticed details that had escaped his attention before. The humans they passed did not look like a conquered people. They showed no signs of fear or subjugation. Instead, they watched the Kethmori patrol with what appeared to be intense interest, as if they were studying every piece of equipment and every tactical movement. More disturbing, he began to notice small devices mounted on buildings, vehicles, and even carried by individual humans. Cameras, sensors, recording equipment, all focused on the Kethmori patrol. They are watching us, Ralvin said quietly. They are learning from us, Zektar corrected. When they reached Sector 7, they found the remains of patrol leader Gexvon's squad scattered across 3 city blocks. The Kethmori warriors had died fighting, but their attackers had melted away into the urban landscape like ghosts. How many humans did we kill? Zektar asked the sole survivor, Warrior Kemthai. Kemthai looked up from his medical treatment with confusion in his eyes. None, sir. None? How is that possible? They never exposed themselves to direct fire. They attacked from impossible angles using weapons that seemed to fire through solid matter. When we tried to pursue, they simply vanished. Zektar examined the scene more carefully. The attack patterns were sophisticated, showing tactical knowledge that should have taken years of combat experience to develop. But humans had only been exposed to Kethmori warfare for 6 months. Sir, Thekmar called from an adjacent building. You need to see this. Inside the building, Thekmar had discovered what appeared to be a human research facility. The walls were covered with detailed diagrams of Kethmori equipment, tactical analyses of their combat methods, and biological studies of their physiology. But these were not crude, primitive drawings. They were sophisticated technical schematics that showed deep understanding of Kethmori technology. More troubling, they included annotations and improvements that Zektar's own engineers had never considered. They know our weaknesses, Ralvin said, studying a diagram that showed the vulnerable points in standard Kethmori armor. How is this possible? Zektar demanded. We have been observing them for 6 months. They should not have been able to learn so much. Sir, Thekmar said from another section of the room. Look at this. He was pointing to a large display screen that showed what appeared to be a global network of similar research facilities. Hundreds of locations around the planet were connected by data links, sharing information in real time. They are not learning individually, Thekmar realized. They are learning collectively. Every piece of information discovered at one location is immediately shared with every other location. This was a terrifying revelation. The Kethmori had always relied on the fact that primitive species learned slowly and kept their knowledge fragmented among different groups. A species that could share all knowledge instantly among all members would be capable of unprecedented rates of advancement. Sir, Ralvin said, we need to report this to High Command immediately. Zektar nodded, but as they prepared to leave the building, alarms began sounding from their ship in orbit. This is the Eternal Dominion, came the voice of Navigation Officer Belton. We are detecting multiple launch signatures from the planet's surface. Primitive rockets, but they appear to be targeting our position. Activate shields and prepare for evasive maneuvers, Zektar ordered. Sir, the projectiles are not following ballistic trajectories. They are actively maneuvering and seem to be using our own navigation signals to guide themselves. Zektar felt a chill run down his spine. Human missiles should not have been able to track Kethmori ships, let alone maneuver in space. Their technology was centuries behind what would be required for such capabilities. Status report, he demanded. Multiple impacts on our forward shields. No damage, but the projectiles were not trying to damage us. They appear to have been sensor packages designed to study our shield harmonics. They are learning how our shields work, Ralvin said with growing alarm. Sir, Belton continued, I am detecting more launches. Dozens of them, all from different locations around the planet. They are using various trajectory patterns as if testing different approach methods. Zektar realized what was happening. The humans were not trying to destroy his ship. They were conducting experiments. Each missile was designed to test a different aspect of Keth-Mori defensive systems. They were learning through direct observation how to overcome his technology. "Return to the ship immediately," he ordered. "Signal High Command. Tell them we have a problem." As they made their way back to their shuttle, Zektar noticed that the humans in the streets were no longer just watching. They were actively following the patrol, maintaining careful distances but clearly tracking their movements. Some carried what appeared to be modified Keth-Mori sensors, while others used devices that Zektar did not recognize at all. "Sir," Thekmar said quietly, "how long do you think they have been studying us?" Zektar considered the question. The research facility they had discovered showed months of detailed analysis. The modified weapons used in the attacks demonstrated sophisticated understanding of Keth-Mori technology. The coordinated global response suggested planning and preparation on a scale that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. "I think," he said slowly, "they have been studying us since the moment we arrived, and I think they have learned more about us than we have learned about them." When they reached orbit, Zektar immediately sent a priority message to High Commander Vexthul. The message was simple but urgent. "Request immediate reinforcements. Human capabilities have been severely underestimated. Recommend full battle fleet deployment before proceeding with conquest." He did not yet know that similar messages were being sent from Keth-Mori outposts all across human space. Nor did he know that human observation networks had been monitoring and analyzing every one of these communications. The humans were learning about more than just technology and tactics. They were learning about Keth-Mori command structure, communication protocols, and strategic planning methods. They were learning how to fight a war against an enemy that had never lost a war before. And most terrifying of all, they were learning fast. High Commander Vexthul stood in the command center of the flagship Blood of Eternity and stared at reports that should have been impossible. In the 12 months since first contact with humanity, the Keth-Mori Empire had lost more warriors than in the previous century of conquest combined. "Explain to me again how this happened," he commanded, his forearms gesturing at the tactical displays that showed the remains of the Third Battle Fleet floating dead in space around Earth's orbit. Fleet Admiral Kextara, veteran of 200 successful campaigns, looked like she had aged decades in the past few weeks. Her obsidian scales had lost their luster, and her red eyes showed something Vexthul had never seen in a Keth-Mori commander before. Uncertainty. "They were waiting for us," she said. "Not just ready, waiting. They knew exactly when and where we would exit hyperspace. They knew our tactical formations. They knew the weaknesses in our shield harmonics. They knew everything. That is impossible. Our battle plans were classified at the highest levels. Our hyperspace exit points were randomized. Our shield frequencies were generated by quantum computers. Nevertheless, High Commander, they knew. The moment we dropped into normal space, we were surrounded by human vessels that should not have been able to exist." Vexthul studied the battle recordings again, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human ships were clearly built using modified Keth-Mori technology, but they had been improved in ways that defied logic. They were faster than Keth-Mori vessels, more maneuverable and somehow more heavily armed despite being smaller. "How did primitives manage to build ships superior to ours?" he asked. "They did not build them from scratch," Kextara replied. "Intelligence suggests they started with captured Keth-Mori vessels from the early occupation forces. Then they improved them." "Improved how?" "They removed what they considered inefficient systems and replaced them with their own designs. They eliminated redundant components and optimized power distribution. They reduced crew requirements through automation and increased weapon efficiency through better targeting systems." Vexthul felt his headache returning. This was the same pattern that had been emerging from every front in the war with humanity. The humans would capture Keth-Mori equipment, study it intensively, and then somehow make it better. "What about their ground forces?" he asked. War Master Zulkan stepped forward, his massive frame bearing the scars of recent battles. "The human soldiers are using modified Keth-Mori armor and weapons, but they fight in ways we have never encountered. They do not engage in honorable single combat. They do not attempt to prove their individual superiority. Instead, they work together like a single organism, elaborate, They share information instantly across their entire force through some kind of neural network. When one human learns something, they all know it immediately. When one human develops a new tactic, they all implement it simultaneously. They adapt to our strategies faster than we can deploy them. Vexthul had heard similar reports from every theater of the war. Human forces that seemed to learn and adapt in real time, as if the entire species shared a collective intelligence. "What is the status of our reality-shaping weapons?" he asked. "Ineffective," admitted Chief Weapons Engineer Voxrel. "The humans have developed countermeasures. They have somehow learned to detect the quantum signatures of our reality shapers before they activate, and they deploy interference fields that prevent proper quantum coherence." This was the most disturbing news yet. The reality shapers were supposed to be the ultimate expression of Kethmori technological superiority. They had ended every war for 3,000 years. The idea that primitives could develop countermeasures was almost unthinkable. "How is this possible?" Vexthul demanded. "We believe they reverse-engineered the principles from captured devices," Voxrel said. "But instead of trying to build their own reality shapers, they focused on understanding the underlying quantum mechanics. Once they understood how the weapons worked, they were able to develop ways to disrupt the process. And they shared this knowledge with their entire military?" "Or with their entire species, High Commander. Human information networks make it possible for any discovery made by any individual to be known by every other individual within hours." Vexthul walked to the main tactical display, which showed the current status of the war. What had begun as a simple conquest operation had become a full-scale military conflict involving most of the Kethmori Empire's forces. Red indicators marked recent defeats, and there were far too many of them. "What is our casualty ratio?" he asked. "Approximately 4 Kethmori losses for every human casualty," Kextara replied quietly. Vexthul spun around to stare at her. "That is impossible. Kethmori warriors are superior to humans in every measurable way." "Individual Kethmori warriors are indeed superior," Zulkan confirmed. "But humans do not fight as individuals. They fight as coordinated groups with perfect information sharing and adaptive tactics. A single human squad can coordinate their actions with military units on the other side of their planet, sharing target information and tactical updates in real time. Moreover," Kextara added, "they seem to treat every engagement as a learning opportunity. They study our tactics during battle and develop countermeasures while the fight is still ongoing. By the end of any engagement, they understand our methods better than we do." Vexthul felt something he had not experienced in his 2,000 years of life. Fear. Not fear of death, which was a warrior's constant companion, but fear of the incomprehensible. The humans were operating according to principles that the Kethmori could not understand. "What do our strategic analysts recommend?" he asked. "Immediate deployment of the Imperial Warfleet," Kextara said. "Full mobilization of all available forces, and activation of the Omega Protocol." The Omega Protocol. Vexthul had hoped never to hear those words. It was the ultimate expression of Kethmori military doctrine, the complete sterilization of an enemy species through reality manipulation on a planetary scale. It had been used only twice in Kethmori history, both times against species that had posed existential threats to the Empire. "You believe humanity represents such a threat?" he asked. "High Commander," Zulkan said, "in the 12 months since first contact, humans have advanced from primitive nuclear technology to weapons that can disable our most sophisticated systems. They have gone from chemical rockets to ships that can outmaneuver our fastest vessels. They have developed from isolated tribal groups to a perfectly coordinated planetary civilization. If this rate of advancement continues," Kexitara added, "within another year they will possess technology superior to ours in every category. Within 2 years they may be capable of threatening the homeworld itself." Vexthul considered this. The Kethmori had encountered rapid technological development before, but nothing approaching the rate shown by humanity. It was as if the entire species had been transformed into a single vast research and development project focused on military advancement. "Very well," he said finally. "Signal the Imperial Warfleet full mobilization. We will end this threat before it can spread beyond their solar system." "And the Omega Protocol?" Kextara asked. "Prepare it, but do not activate it yet. I want to see if conventional forces can handle this situation first." As his commanders dispersed to carry out their orders, Vexthul remained alone with the tactical displays. The red indicators marking human victories seemed to pulse like warning lights, reminding him of something that no Kethmori commander had ever faced before: the possibility of defeat. He activated a communication channel to the homeworld and waited for the connection to establish. When the image of the High Council appeared on his screen, he delivered his report with the precision expected of a senior commander. "The human threat is more severe than initially assessed," he said. "They represent a new type of opponent, one that learns and adapts faster than our tactical doctrine can accommodate. I am deploying all available forces to contain them before they can spread beyond their system." "And if containment fails?" asked Elder Kexthan, the oldest member of the council. Vexthul paused before answering. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Kethmori had never failed to contain a threat. Their superior technology, tactics, and individual capabilities had always been sufficient. "Then we may be facing the first species capable of challenging Kethmori supremacy," he admitted. The council members exchanged glances that Vexthul could not interpret. They were old, even by Kethmori standards, and had seen the rise and fall of hundreds of civilizations. But none of them had ever heard a report like this. "Do what you must," Elder Kexthan said finally. "But remember, the Empire has survived for 3 millennia because we have never allowed any threat to grow beyond our ability to control it." The transmission ended, and Vexthul was left alone with his thoughts. Outside the viewports, the assembled might of the Kethmori Imperial Warfleet stretched across space like a metal constellation. Thousands of ships, millions of warriors, weapons capable of reshaping reality itself. It should have been enough to crush any opponent. But as he watched the fleet prepare for battle, Vexthul found himself wondering if "should" had any meaning when dealing with humans. They had already proven that they did not follow the rules by which the rest of the galaxy operated. Soon he would discover just how far beyond those rules they were willing to go, and somewhere in the depths of space human ships were moving into position, carrying weapons and tactics that the Kethmori had never seen before. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the apex predators of the galaxy were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. The end of the Kethmori Empire began at exactly 1427, Universal Standard Time on a Tuesday. High Commander Vexthul watched from the Bridge of Blood of Eternity as the largest military force in galactic history prepared to eliminate humanity once and for all. The Imperial Warfleet stretched across space in perfect formation, 10,000 ships, carrying the finest warriors and most advanced weapons the Kethmori had ever created. "All units report ready for final assault," Fleet Admiral Kextara announced. "Target coordinates locked. Reality shapers charged to maximum power." Vexthul nodded. The plan was simple and overwhelming. Every major human population center would be hit simultaneously, with reality-shaping weapons set to maximum dispersion. The humans would not just die, they would be erased from existence so completely that the universe would forget they had ever lived. "Activate Omega Protocol," he commanded. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth." "Ignore it. Begin countdown to reality shaper deployment." "Sir, the transmission is on Kethmori command frequencies. They are using our own codes." Vexthul felt a familiar chill. In 18 months of war, the humans had demonstrated a disturbing ability to penetrate Kethmori systems. But command codes were quantum encrypted and changed randomly every few hours. "Display the message," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what appeared to be a human command center. But the technology visible in the background was clearly Kethmori in origin, though modified in ways that made Vexthul's eyes ache to look at it. A human woman stepped into view. She was small and unremarkable, like all humans, but something in her eyes reminded Vexthul of the look he had seen in veteran Kethmori warriors. "High Commander Vexthul," she said. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. We need to talk." "There is nothing to discuss," Vexthul replied. "You have 30 seconds before your species ceases to exist. Actually, you have 30 seconds to stand down your fleet before we demonstrate why that would be a mistake." Vexthul almost laughed. The arrogance of these creatures never ceased to amaze him. "You are surrounded by 10,000 ships carrying reality-shaping weapons. What could you possibly do to threaten us?" Chen smiled, and Vexthul suddenly realized he did not like that smile at all. "We could start by showing you what we learned from studying your homeworld," she said. The view screen split, and suddenly Vexthal was looking at two images. One showed Earth, surrounded by the massive Kethmori fleet. The other showed Kethmor, the Kethmori homeworld, 300 light-years away. Except Kethmor was also surrounded by ships. Human ships, how is this possible? Vexthal whispered. Your faster-than-light technology is really quite elegant, Chen said conversationally. Once we understood the principles, we were able to improve the efficiency by about 40%. Our ships can now travel faster than yours and with much better stealth capabilities. The homeworld has planetary defenses that would destroy any attacking fleet. Yes, we studied those too. Reality-shaping defensive grids, quantum interference fields, temporal displacement barriers. Very impressive. Unfortunately, they all operate on the same basic principles as your shipboard systems, which we have been studying for the past 18 months. Vexthal looked around his bridge. His officers were checking their own sensor systems, trying to confirm what they were seeing on the screen. Sir, his sensor operator said quietly, long-range scans confirm the presence of unknown vessels in the Kethmor system. Configuration unknown, but energy signatures are unusual. How many ships? Vexthal demanded, difficult to determine. Their stealth technology is beyond our ability to penetrate, but estimated numbers suggest at least 50,000 vessels. 50,000. The humans had built a fleet 5 times larger than the largest military force the Kethmori had ever assembled, and they had done it in less than 2 years. This is impossible, Fleet Admiral Kextara said. They do not have the industrial capacity to build such a fleet. Actually, we do, Chen said, apparently having overheard the comment. You see, when you gave us access to Kethmori technology, you also gave us access to automated manufacturing systems far beyond what we had previously achieved. We have been building ships continuously for the past year using modified versions of your own fabrication technology. Modified how? Vexthal asked, though he was beginning to suspect he did not want to know the answer. Well, your fabrication systems are designed to produce ships according to preset specifications that have not changed for centuries. We modified them to be adaptive. Each ship incorporates improvements based on data from previously built vessels, so each ship in our fleet is slightly better than the one before it. Vexthal felt his world turning upside down. The Kethmori built their ships to proven designs that had been perfected over millennia. The idea of constantly changing those designs was almost incomprehensible. Moreover, Chen continued, we do not limit ourselves to ship-based manufacturing. We have converted several asteroids into mobile factory complexes that can build new vessels while traveling through hyperspace. Our industrial capacity increases every day. Sir, the weapons officer said, reality shapers are fully charged and ready to fire. Vexthal looked at the screen showing the human fleet around his homeworld. If he activated the Omega Protocol, would the humans retaliate against Kethmor? Could they? I would not recommend that course of action, Chen said, as if reading his thoughts. You see, we have made some improvements to reality-shaping technology that I think you would find interesting. On the screen, one of the human ships near Kethmor began to glow with an energy pattern that Vexthal recognized but had never seen at such intensity. It was the signature of a reality shaper, but the power levels were far beyond anything the Kethmori had ever achieved. Your reality shapers work by convincing small sections of the universe that the target does not exist, Chen explained. We thought that was rather limited in scope, so we developed reality shapers that can convince the universe that entire star systems never existed. The glowing human ship fired, the third planet, in the Kethmor system, an uninhabited world that had served as a military testing ground for thousands of years, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but completely erased from reality. The space where it had been was not even empty. It was an absence that hurt to look at. We tested that on several uninhabited systems before deploying it operationally, Chen said. The process seems to be stable and reversible, though we have not figured out how to bring things back yet. Vexthal stared at the screen in horror. The humans had not just improved Kethmori technology, they had transformed it into something that exceeded every theoretical limit the Kethmori had calculated. What do you want? He asked. Complete surrender of all Kethmori forces, immediate withdrawal from all occupied territories, dismantling of the Empire's military infrastructure, and cooperation with human research teams studying Kethmori technology and biology. And if we refuse? Chen's smile grew colder. Then we demonstrate our other improvements. Did you know that we have learned to modify your biological enhancement systems? We can now reprogram Kethamori DNA to make your species completely docile. Or we could use our improved reality shapers to erase your species from history so completely that no one will remember you ever existed. Vexthul looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their displays in shock. Everything they had believed about Kethamori's superiority was crumbling around them. "You cannot do this," he said desperately. "We are the apex predators of the galaxy. We have ruled for 3,000 years. Actually," Chen said, "our analysis suggests that you stopped being apex predators about 18 months ago. You just did not realize it yet." "Sir?" Fleet Admiral Kextara said quietly, "Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups from the human ships around the homeworld. If they fire those weapons..." Vexthul closed his eyes. In 2,000 years of life, he had never imagined a situation like this. The Kethamori had always been the hunters, never the prey. The idea of surrender was alien to everything their culture represented, but the alternative was extinction. "Stand down all weapons," he commanded. "Signal the fleet to power down reality shapers and prepare for surrender negotiations." "A wise choice," Chen said. "You will find that humans can be quite reasonable when we are not being invaded." Over the next 6 hours, the surrender was negotiated and implemented. The largest military force in galactic history laid down their arms without firing a shot. Overwhelmed not by superior firepower but by superior adaptation. Within a month, the Kethamori Empire had been completely dismantled. Their colonies were granted independence, their slave worlds were liberated, and their military technology was confiscated for study by human researchers. Within a year, most of the galaxy had forgotten that the Kethamori had ever been the dominant species. History books were rewritten to emphasize the role of other species in galactic development. Cultural databases were modified to minimize Kethamori achievements. The former apex predators found themselves subjects in a galaxy where humans had become the new dominant force. But unlike the Kethamori, humans seemed more interested in learning from other species than ruling over them. High Commander Vexthul, now simply Citizen Vexthul, spent his days in a human research facility, helping xenobiologists understand Kethamori physiology. The work was not unpleasant, and the humans treated him with something that might have been respect. But sometimes, in quiet moments, he would remember what it had felt like to be the predator instead of the prey. He would remember the time when Kethamori ships had been the most feared sight in the galaxy, when their very name had made entire civilizations surrender without a fight. Those days seemed like ancient history now. Dr. Sarah Kim, the human researcher assigned to study him, often asked about Kethamori culture and military doctrine. She was particularly interested in understanding how a species could dominate the galaxy for so long, and then lose everything so quickly. "I think," Vexthul had told her during one of their sessions, "we forgot that evolution never stops. We thought we had reached the end point, that we were as advanced as it was possible to be. We stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped growing." "And humans?" Dr. Kim had asked. "Humans never stop. Every challenge makes you stronger. Every defeat teaches you something new. Every victory opens up new possibilities. You treat the entire universe as a classroom." Dr. Kim had nodded and made notes in her tablet. The notes would be shared instantly with human researchers around the galaxy, added to the vast collaborative project of understanding and improving everything they encountered. Vexthal watched her work and marveled at the simple efficiency of it. Kethamori would have hoarded such knowledge, used it as a tool for maintaining superiority over other species. Humans shared it freely, using it to lift up everyone around them. Perhaps he thought that was the real difference between predators and whatever humans had become. Predators consumed their environment to maintain dominance. Humans transformed their environment to create new possibilities. The apex predators of the galaxy had become extinct, not because they were killed, but because they had become irrelevant. Evolution had moved beyond them, and they had not even noticed until it was too late. In the depths of space, human exploration fleets continued to expand outward, carrying with them the most dangerous trait any species had ever possessed: the unlimited capacity to learn from anything and anyone they encountered. The universe, it seemed, had become their classroom, and they were very, very good students.